All right, let's continue with our coverage of schools returning to normal from tomorrow. And across the country, they'll be able to go back to class at 100% capacity. This follows a decision taken by the Council of Education Ministers. Some parents have mixed emotions in the midst of the pandemic, now that learners will be in school daily. eNCA reporter Manqoba Mchunu joins me now to give us more reaction. Manqoba, I believe you are with COSAS and they represent the pupils, right? But of course, you know, there are some pupils, Manqoba, who didn't have that physical time with their teachers and, you know, they really need it.
Indeed, Masiho, we do know that the past 2 years have indeed been difficult for students in general here in South Africa, having to go under that rotational timetable, but also the issue around COVID-19, social distancing. All of those issues have been quite problematic for students over the past few years. But of course, there is some sense of optimism from the parents who we spoke to earlier on, who are saying that they are quite hopeful that with the schools going back to full timetable, that the lost time or the school time that was lost over the past 2 years will actually be, there will be efforts to try and regain some of that lost time, but also saying that they're quite excited to see that children will be going back to school. But I'm speaking to COSAS now. They've been quite vocal about some of these issues, in fact calling on many occasions for schools to be shut down. Joining me now is the national spokesperson, Douglas Ngobeni. Thank you, Douglas, for your time. Let's start with the reaction of the announcement that was made by the Minister of Basic Education on schools going back to full capacity.
No, thank you, and gratitude from the Black and White Army. This decision makes an affirmation to what we have always said as the young people of the country, not even as COSAS only, to say that we have tolerated nonsense for a very long time now. We have tolerated all people juggling with the lives of the young people of South Africa, more particularly in this case where schools had to be shut down, this and that. And that is a call we have always made and maintained as a Congress of South African Students, that if there is a rapid increase in the number of COVID-19 cases, schools have to be shut down. But at some point you would have seen that there was an embracement of some private and public inequalities. Now, the Congress of South African Students welcomes this decision of getting learners back to class on full-time basis, because at this point, 2 years later, we can no longer give COVID as an excuse of not going to school. It is only a matter of these old people who are sitting at the helm of top positions in our government who do not have a plan. The only thing which we should be worried about now as the Congress of South African Students and as South Africans is that what have they done in those 2 years? Because they knew in those 2 years that there is not even sufficient infrastructure to accommodate even learners who would go to school during normal times. I mean, when there was no COVID, our classes are dilapidated and there is no space. And then COVID-19 required us to be in a space where there's social distancing and everything. Now, we are going back to school on a full-time basis, but we are still confronted with the same situation where our infrastructure is still nonsense. So it is a call which is being directed to us as the young people of this country to ask, what do we then do with these old people who for the past 2 years were only focused on looting PPE money and everything. And let
me ask this question, because the minister did speak about this, the issue of infrastructure. Of course, she did admit that there are still problems when it comes to the issue of infrastructure and overcrowding, but she says that this is a systemic issue that they are really looking into and they'll be making announcements as far as that is concerned. Are you accepting that as COSAS?
No, we live in a democracy as old as 28 years old. We cannot come back in 2022 and tell us about a systematic problem around the infrastructure. These people have got money. The Department of Basic, by the way, this is not their money. This is a money which belongs to the government, and the government is the people, the taxpayers are the ones who deposit the money into the coffers of the state. But instead, these people return that money to national treasury because they do not have a plan. They know that their children are not in these dilapidated classes. They know that their children are in Kuro, their children, some of them are even attending there in overseas and everywhere. So they do not care anyhow about the infrastructure of our classes in South Africa. Don't come here in 2022, 28 or 29 years after democracy. You want to tell us that it is a systematic issue. What were you doing all along?
Okay, but one would say that you had an opportunity perhaps to raise some of these issues during that Lekgotla, but I understand that you walked away.
No, we went to a Lekgotla of the Department of Basic Education. Ours was such a simple thing, to make a submission around the transformation of the curriculum, to say that we want a career-orientated curriculum so that after the completion of our matric, we don't go around looking for jobs. We must be job creators as compared to being job creators. And then now you find a Lekgotla of a Department of Education, a hall, a very beautiful hall, a very expensive hall, by the way, filled with people with sugar diabetes, people who people who do not have a plan. These people are just pensioners. They do not know what is really happening at the ground. So we had to walk away as the Congress of South African Students to say, but we can't listen to this nonsense, because obviously these people are just, the media will term them as experts and what's so not, experience and what's so not. That is what we are not interested in as a Congress of South African Students. We want a radical approach in dealing with the issues we're confronted with as young South Africans. So we cannot go to that expensive hotel there with a hall which looks like it's collapsing, and we have to sit there forever.
Let's talk about this issue now. As COSAS, will you be keeping tabs on the ground, perhaps assessing the situation when it comes to issues of infrastructure, and more importantly, the safety of learners as they go back to school?
Well, it is not an issue which we are going to be doing for the first time. We already know the condition on the ground. We already know the conditions in our schools. And these people are seated in their beautiful desks with these reports to say that there is Bankuna in Limpopo, Tzanini, Nkonko, where Titombo, by the way, attended, where he matriculated. They know that that school is dilapidated. They know that there is a school in Lusikisiki, Ward 1 of Inokumgijima in the Eastern Cape, where learners still have to cross rivers in a very cold morning to school. So these are some of the issues which we already know. We don't need to go back and start an investigation of some nature. We'll be wasting our time. Let us deal with that issue which is already at hand, and then we will take it from there.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. That was Manqoba here, who is the national spokesperson, speaking to us, that's articulating some of their issues as COSAS. Of course, the issues are around infrastructure and the lack of it thereof in some of the schools. But of course, they're saying that at this particular point, they do welcome that decision by the basic education minister, actually, to announce that schools will be going back to full capacity. But they will, of course, be monitoring the situation, more especially in these problem areas where issues of overcrowding and infrastructure remain.